What's up, Packer fans? I'm Untitled Chapter, host of Monologue Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. The Packers are on a bye week, and I have been going back and forth on whether or not I wanted to post a video this week or also take a bye week, a chance to refresh, get away from the amount of work that I put into these videos. So if you are new to this channel, this is the first time you're clicking on it, please don't, take this video with a grain of salt. I'm just going to do a little bit of rambling, some of my end of season predictions, kind of my overall thoughts on the Packers so far. I usually have a script. I don't even have a script. I'm winging it. Guys, it is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So welcome to the episode, guys. First things first, I have to thank the 803 subscribers that I have to this channel. I look over my shoulder here because I'm going to be giving away this canvas once I hit 1,000 subscribers. But I did surpass the 800 mark early on this week, whatever date it was, Monday, Tuesday of this week. So I'm a little under 200 away from that 1,000 subscriber base, which is absolutely awesome. I appreciate the support. I have so many faithful just viewers of this show, people that tune in on Monday night when I go live and comment and chime in with support and Packers questions. We all have the love for the Green Bay Packers. So like I said, once I hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm giving away this canvas. I'm already really realizing at this point that I am stuttering over a lot of my words because I'm so used to doing this by the book, by doing this on the script. And then when I took a drink of my beer, I realized that this thing, I could probably pass this off as apple juice, and I could just drink apple juice this entire time. But I'm not drinking apple juice. I am drinking a McGolden, and I am ready to talk about some Packer news. So we head into the bye week, or we are in the bye week, quite frankly, sitting at 8-2, first place in the NFC North. We are technically second place in the NFC and could be in first place in a roundabout way, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out, with a win in San Francisco just 1 week away. So the Packers have positioned themselves in a really good spot. I had done my preseason or my season predictions way back when they released the schedule months ago, and I did not see us sitting at 8-2 at this point. I did think that we'd have a really good team. I did think that we would have probably 11-5 team, a 12-4 team, and I still think we are pacing for that, possibly pacing a little bit better than that, but I will get to some of my last season or end of season predictions here shortly. But you have to absolutely love what the Packers have been able to do. All the talk heading into the season obviously was would Rodgers and LaFleur get along? Would that relationship be a budding relationship, or would there be animosity towards there? Is Aaron Rodgers coachable? Is LaFleur coming into his first season as a head coach able to kind of take the talent on this team and go to the next level, make the playoffs, and be a contender in the NFC? And all the preseason predictions were, they weren't talking about the Packers, they were talking about the Bears, they were talking about the Vikings, and here we are, first place in the NFC North. You don't hear any, rumors or rumblings about any discontent between Rodgers and LaFleur, so it's great to have some of that in the behind us in the rearview mirror. At this point, we are just talking about football, and we do have an outstanding football team that we get to cheer on as the weather turns cold as we go through November into December. And yes, I do believe we will make the playoffs. If we look on the offensive side of the ball, there's just been a huge emergence as far as our running game. It's just taken what Rodgers has to do under center and kind of flipped it on its head. He no longer has to be that guy that has to go out there and carry the team week in and week out. And that's one of the wonderful things that I think people are forgetting about, is that there's some, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Hate or discontent or confusion on whether or not Rodgers still is Rodgers and can do Rodgers things. And for a little bit there, a couple weeks ago, he was in the MVP discussion. I'm not really sure I see him as a forerunner for the MVP consideration, but I don't think you need to have just one guy as the MVP on your team. I could really care less at this point whether or not Rodgers becomes MVP, because at the end of the day, it's about winning games, it's about winning Super Bowls, and I do think we have our team set up for that. So like I said, Rodgers doesn't have to carry the team. The reason why he doesn't have to carry the team is because you have a guy like Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, and I do think that Jamal Williams does not get as much credit as he deserves. I think he is equally as capable. I would give the nod to Aaron Jones, obviously, with his 14 touchdowns up to this point. Whether it's rushing or passing touchdowns, he's been absolutely a rock star, and he's taken a lot of pressure off of Rodgers, and he's taken a lot of pressure off of the young and inexperienced wide receiving group that was a lot of concern, or there was a lot of concern for as we head into the season. We look at what we've been able to do as far as weathering the storm with Devontae Adams out. We saw an emergence of Allen Lazard. We saw a little bit of an emergence from Coomer, although he has been around on the team longer. We've had some of these players step up. As we look forward to the second half of the season, just looking at the offensive side of the ball, you have to wonder when Adams will come away with his first touchdown, because through 10 weeks, yes, he missed some time, but he has yet to score a touchdown this season, which is absolutely remarkable. It has to come against the 49ers. I think that is just too big of a game where you don't have Adams in your game plan to get him into the end zone. On the other side, or looking more in that offense, you look at a guy like Jimmy Graham. I've talked about a lot on this podcast and this YouTube channel that I'm not completely in love with Jimmy Graham no longer. I was a huge fan of him when the signings happened, but I think he doesn't, kind of like Rodgers, he doesn't need to be the guy for our tight end group. I think Mercedes Lewis has shown that he can step up and catch passes from Rodgers, and then we have to look at Sternberger coming back from injured reserve and possibly coming into the fold. I think that is a very young, talented tight end that we have that can stretch the field. That really is more of a wide receiver 2 or 3, just with his size, but just the way that he's able to run block and just play that tight end position could be really useful as we look forward. So you have to love where our offense is at the bye week. Yes, there's still room for improvement, and that's probably the thing that can start to give you a little bit of chills, is that this offense is not firing on all cylinders yet. This should be an offense that can go out there and consistently put up 34 to 40 points a game, just with the amount of talent that you have and some of the creative things that they can do on the offensive side of the ball. So yes, love our offense. If I had to give them into the bye week, which is ironically kind of like a mid-season grade, I would give our offense a solid B+, which leaves room for improvement. You'd like to see more consistency from some of our wide receivers. You'd like to see more, more passes to Adams. But I think Rodgers is doing Rodgers things just as he always did. And if they can continue to work on this run game that we have. And then I didn't even talk about the offensive line. The offensive line, for the most part, has been outstanding. Outside of that, just horrendous Los Angeles Chargers performance, Elgton Jenkins has really stepped up. I mean, he's a rookie that's coming to the league that ranks as one of the best pass blockers in the NFL. You have 2 of the best tackles, arguably the best tandem tackles in the entire league. And then Elgton Jenkins has filled in well. And then our center, Corey Linsley, has also played very well to go along with it. So B+ grade for that offense. I didn't know I was going to go down that road as far as grading our offense and defense, but since I did the offense, it's only fair to talk about our defense. And our defense it has potential, I guess is what I want to say. So our defense started off really strong. Rodgers, after a post-game interview, I think it was week 1 against the Bears, is we have a defense. And it was something that we were so excited about as Green Bay Packer fans, that we wouldn't have to, throw up 30 to 40 points on offense just to win a game. And they were able to do that early on, but then the cracks started to show in that Philadelphia game in week 4. And they've kind of just, gone through the motions as far as giving up yards, but limiting points. Regardless, the free agent acquisitions that we were able to bring in Preston and Zadarius Smith have definitely been worth what we have paid for. You look at these guys just as pass rushers, what they were able to do, and you look at our previous pairing of Nick Perry and Clay Matthews. It's obviously a huge improvement, and it's a difference maker for what we can do from the pass rush side of things. Where we fall into a problem with this defense is 2 head-scratching things that I'm consistently seeing that the Packers need to look at improving as they head into this final stretch, as we approach the playoffs. And obviously, you're going to have to talk about our run game. We have to tighten up our ability to stop the run. We played some really good running backs through the first half of the season, and I don't see that slowing down, especially with San Francisco just around the corner. They have a multitude of running backs in their backfield that they can just kind of run and pick away and chip away all throughout. all throughout that game. So this is one thing where if you can not slow down the run, you effectively are not going to be able to use your best two players on the defense with Za'Darius and Preston Smith and get a pass rush. So they have to at least clean this up a little bit. I don't think it's something that they're going to be able to perfect. I don't think it is going to hinder the Packers defense if they can't get it locked up completely, but we need to continue moving that needle, improving that defensive line, and stopping and slowing down the rush game for this Packers defense to get to where it needs to be. The second thing is going to be just more of a Mike Pettin thing more than anything else, and I'm really curious if he is starting to hear the rumblings. I mean, it's over the media. It's stuff that I've talked about too. But the zone defense that they continue to play week in and week out has just got to kind of go away. I think zone defense is a great thing to have from time to time. It allows you to maybe fool the quarterback as far as where defenders are going to be and come away with some interceptions. But at the end of the day, I really think that we have the talent with the Jair Alexander, and sometimes we have that talent with Kevin King where we can really focus more on playing a man-to-man defense, and that should be something that he considers, or hopefully he considers, as we move forward in the second half of the year. We've given up a ton of yards. We've given up, close. I don't know what, like I said, I didn't do a whole lot of research, but we're giving up 350, 400 passing yards a game, total yards a game. And like I said, the Packers have been able to knock it down, tighten it up when it gets into the red zone and prevent teams from scoring points. But this doesn't look like one of those scary defenses that are going to rule the NFC or rule the NFL for that matter as we head into playoff discussions and as we head into matchups when the going gets tough. You look at the San Francisco 49ers and what they're able to do on their defensive side of the ball. The players just look angry. They look aggressive. They look like hard hitters. They give it everything they got, and that's something that I have not I've seen it at times, but something I haven't seen in consistency. I think this defense needs to get angry. It needs to get dirty. It needs to play with a little bit more brutal force, if you will. Not dirty to the point where you're ripping off a helmet and hitting them in the head, a quarterback in the head. And I don't want to go down the Myles Garrett path whatsoever, but I would like to see this defense improve in just kind of its swagger and how it goes out there. And they have a guy like Alexander who is more than enough. Has more than enough cockiness to kind of carry that swagger, and humility is great. It's something that Green Bay has always held as a standard for their players. They are humble. They don't bring in riff-raff types of players, but at the end of the day, this defense needs to get a little bit more swagger to them, and I think that will hopefully kind of start to tip the scale. So if we're going to talk about our defense through the bye week or up to the bye week, midway through the season, I'm probably going to give them somewhere around a B grading, a little bit less than that offense. And these are both above average offenses and both above average defenses that I'm talking about here. I guess above average offense and defense that I'm talking about here. And then it shows with the record. 8-2 is not something that you can just stumble upon in the NFL. There are only 4 teams or 3 teams. I don't know what we got. All right, I had to look it up, and I was right with my initial gut feeling. But there are only 4 teams in the NFL with 8 wins. You look at the Patriots, the Niners, the Packers, and the Seahawks, and you look at all 4 of those teams, and they haven't gotten there just by luck. They've had to work their tails off. They've had to win some hard-fought games to get to that point. And I think the Packers are right there on the cusp of making a strong playoff run. But from what I've seen up to this point, they're just a little bit behind the curve as far as just being that clear favorite in the NFC as the team to beat. And I think next Sunday's game against San Francisco will go a long way for them solidifying themselves, especially if they go out there, give a strong performance, play all 4 quarters, hold down the penalties, limit the penalties, improve their special teams. Because I'm not even going to get into the special teams. It's just absolutely a shit show of a special teams unit that we have, and teams know that. But we figure out this offense and defense and come together, and we have ourselves set up for a very fun second half of this season. So I think one other thing that I just want to talk about quick as I go through this. So there is we're right around that time of the year where ESPN releases their playoff machine. It's probably one of my favorite things to do as the season starts to wind down. That's where you can really every single week go out there and make your prediction of how you see the rest of the season shaping up. But there is another system out there. I'll leave a link down below. It's playoffpredictors.com, and I did go through this late one night this week and kind of just picked and choose what I thought would come to be as far as how the season shakes out and how the records shake out. And one thing, I'm gonna probably post some pictures on here and edit it as I do this editing later on in the video. But one thing that kind of came to my attention is I have essentially Green Bay finishing in the number 2 seed and getting themselves a first round bye. But in order for Green Bay to come away with the 1 seed in the NFL, I believe that they need to win out the rest of their games, and I don't think that's a possibility. I think that it's just the NFL. We have 2 really hard matchups between the 49ers and then heading to US Bank Stadium to face the Vikings. I think worst case scenario, we finish the season at 12-4. I'm not saying I'm looking past the Bears. I'm not saying I'm looking past the Lions because they always play us tough when we head over to Detroit. But I do think if this is a team that is going to make a strong playoff push, is going to start to build some momentum as they head into the playoffs, they have to come away with at least 12 wins in the season. That does give them the NFC North divisional title, and that does get them a second round bye. Now, the team that I have ahead of them in the NFC or finishing the NFC is actually the Seattle Seahawks with a 13-3 record. And if I pull up what I have here for predicting their final games, I only have them losing 1 more game this season. And for me, it's not that final game against San Francisco in Week 17. I actually have them losing to the Los Angeles Rams in Week 14 at LA. Outside of that, they play the Eagles, they play the Vikings at home, they play the Panthers on the road. And then they wrap up against they're at home against Arizona and San Francisco. So those aren't. We're just having fun. We're just predicting. None of those. There's a lot of games in there that can kind of be 50-50 games. Especially, that Carolina one, I can almost go back and forth on how that one shapes out to end out for them. But I have the Seattle Seahawks finishing at 13-3. Even if the Packers, and here's one of the interesting things that I did, and like I said, I'll leave the link below. Play with it if you want to. Do your own predictions, how you see it. I suggest that you be a little bit unbiased with your love for the Packers because it keeps things a little bit more honest. But I had Green Bay, even if they do end up losing to San Francisco, and even if they still end up losing to Minnesota, and they finish the season 4-2. I still have them with that number 2 seed and still getting themselves a first round bye. It's just kind of the way that these games unwrap and unfold. I see the Saints, they're probably one of the more popular teams that kind of push for that first round bye. I see them splitting their games, or excuse me, they play games against Tampa Bay, Carolina, Atlanta. I have them winning all 3 of those games. And then they are at home against San Francisco, and I do think that it's one of their few losses that they will have. And then I look at another game against Carolina to end the season. I do think Carolina will probably win one of those matchups against the Saints, whether it's on the road or whether they have to play Carolina at home. So I had the Saints finishing at 12-4. You look at the Eagles as the NFC East pick, in my opinion. I think that is a much better team than the Dallas Cowboys. Once again, the Dallas Cowboys will crumble and shrivel to the ground. I do think that Jason Garrett needs to get his ass out of Dallas, and I think Jerry Jones has to know that at this point. There was just some awful coaching last week when it came to the end of that Minnesota Viking Dallas Cowboy game. I think the Dallas offense had everything going for them to position themselves to win that game late on, and just the coaching, the decision to run it, the decisions to use timeouts when they use timeouts or not use timeouts. I just thought that was just an absolute awful way that whole game ended, and Dallas should have came away with that, and I think that's something that's going to just continue to haunt them throughout the rest of the year. I think Philadelphia is the better team. I think they have the better coach. I think they have probably even the better quarterback. I'd probably take Carson Wentz over Dak Prescott if I had the choice. And then what makes things even more interesting is we have our Seahawks, Packers, Saints, and Eagles winning the divisions. Our wild card becomes just a battle of really good records that just didn't end up winning their division. I have the San Francisco 49ers at that 5th seed, so the best team in the league a week ago. I do see them finishing 13-3, which is the same record as the Seattle Seahawks, but they would lose the tiebreaker based on their head-to-head matchups throughout the year. So San Francisco is the 5th seed, and then you look at Minnesota playing or taking that final spot. As a Packer fan, I obviously any divisional rival I am not a fan of by any means, but I think the Minnesota Vikings have a good enough defense. I think they have a good enough offense, plenty of offensive weapons outside of Kirk Cousins, and they finished the season at 12-4. Seattle, Packers, Saints, Eagles, your top 4. San Francisco and Minnesota round out the NFC matchups. Then you would look at obviously New Orleans playing Minnesota in the wild card of the NFL playoffs, and then you'd have the Eagles playing San Francisco. I'm going to take the Saints over Minnesota. I am going to take the San Francisco 49ers over the Eagles, and that takes us to the divisional round. And that would match up the Saints with the Packers in Green Bay. And you'd have another matchup with the San Francisco 49ers and the Seahawks in Seattle. That would be one hell of a fun divisional weekend. And if you're curious what's going on in the NFC or in the AFC at this point, I have in the divisional round Kansas City playing at New England, and I have Oakland playing at Baltimore in the divisional round. So then we had the NFC Championship games and the AFC Championship games. How can I pick against the Packers, right? So I like the Packers winning that game. I do actually like Seattle continuing to kind of have San Francisco's number. And I think there's a couple of things that factor into this. I think you look at the experience that Pete Carroll has over Kyle Shanahan. You look at the experience at quarterback between Jimmy Garoppolo and a Russell Wilson. You look at Russell Wilson and the type of season that he has. I think their defenses between San Francisco and Seattle are very comparable, but the next two games essentially between these teams would take place in Seattle, and going to Seattle is one dangerous place to play, and I would have to give that nod to Seattle. But in the NFL, of course, anything can happen. So that would leave up the NFC Championship game, Green Bay heading to Seattle, a 1 versus 2 seed. We're going all the way back to 2015, 2014, whichever season that was. Brandon Bostic is no longer part of the team. And then in the AFC, you have the Patriots and the Ravens. So here we are. We're final four teams. These are my predictions. Like I said, we're just having fun with this show. Just doing a little bit of rambling, not a whole lot of scripted material outside of what I did with this playoff or this season calculator. And I'm going to probably leave it at that. I'm going to leave it on eggshells as far as how I see that panning out. It's all going to depend on a number of factors of what teams are really starting to find their groove and are rolling. I've said there's two keys to making a strong Super Bowl run. It's getting hot at the right time, and then, of course, making the playoffs is going to be the most crucial part of that. If you can make the playoffs, you obviously, it goes without saying, you have a chance at winning the Super Bowl. So what team is going to be playing the hottest is going to be the biggest factor. And we've come off of successful seasons where we've, look at our 15-1 season where we made it to the divisional round, but we just played flat at home against the Giants, and they can't do that. They have to gain their momentum heading into the season finale or as the season wraps up. One thing that kind of sparked in my mind, and then I'll close out this video, is just the fact, too, that we have been able to stay healthy for the most part. Outside of Adams missing some time, we had Savage miss a little bit of time. Oren Burks was out early on the season. But as we head into these final 6 games of the year, you have to love the fact that Green Bay is approaching this matchup against San Francisco. And I'll talk about this more probably on Monday's live show. And we'll talk about it more on next Friday's Final Thoughts. But they're heading into one of their most important games of the season with a healthy roster. And that's something that you just can't take for granted. This team has been able to stay healthy. I think LaFleur and his coaching staff has done a great job of keeping these guys fresh and keeping them, precautionary methods of keeping them off the field or limiting their play count unless they can go out there and be 100%. So if they can continue to stay healthy, that's going to be the biggest determining factor on whether they're going to be able to come away with some of these hard-fought victories and stay in some of these games and finish with a 12-4 record or a 13-3 record. Is probably the best scenario that I do see the Packers finishing with. So with that, again, thank you guys for tuning in. This was a completely different change of pace. No script, a little bit of rambling, not so much drinking as I probably would have enjoyed to have, but I guess I can finish that as I edit this video and post it out there here on Friday night. I will be live on Monday night at 9 p.m. So if you guys want to tune in, I'm still trying to figure out. If you watched my last one, it was just, I had lag, and stuttering video. I still had 10 to 15 people who were consistently viewing at any given time, so that was incredible. I got to figure out how to fix that, and I got to figure out how to fix it fast. But outside of that, live on Monday night, we will have a Final Thoughts video the following Friday. I'll go back into my statistics. I will go back into where my keys to victory are and how the Packers can come away with a victory on their road trip to San Francisco. And buckle up, guys. This is the best part of the year. This is when it really you're starting to kind of figure out where these playoff teams are, who are true contenders, who are pretenders, and every game's gonna really every week's gonna have some sort of little plot twist in how the seedings and the rest of the season unfolds. So again, thank you for tuning in. I'm gonna wrap up the video. Until next time, I will see you on the internet. Go Pack Go.